So I don't think there's much you can do to prevent inflation at that point.
They could
Everyone, or morning, depending on where you are.
Yo.
Morning.
so
Everyone doing all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, doing good, man.
Cool. So I thought about this topic. How do we know who to trust in light of everything that's going on with the vaccine and all this doubt and kind of people don't know what's going on with the vaccine right now. We've got a lot of people that are religiously kind of thinking that it will be the stop to the virus, and then there's people that are worried about it not being long-term tested enough. And I mean, that's on a large scale, so we can move to that later. But first, just on an individual level, I would ask if anyone here has any thoughts on how do you know who to trust, how to trust somebody? How do you develop that bond with another person? Anyone have any thoughts?
I guess I'll go first. I'd probably say we work off credibility. Interesting thing about humans is how fast we judge other human beings. It's roughly about 15 seconds, about 5 seconds to make judgments, and about 15 seconds to start really solidifying those things. Make predictions about the personality we see. So that's quite interesting. And then I think we go off credibility. Yeah, that's about it. I think that's how we trust people. And that credibility is different for each subjective moment and for each person.
I would say I personally look at the primary motivation of the individual and then see if I can apply the property of trust to them. That's sort of where I'd start with regards to trust.
Do you have an example of that?
Let's see now.
It's okay if you need to think about it.
Yeah, I'll think about that for a moment.
All right. In the meantime, do a little.
I have about 3 different ones that I think are worth considering, but it depends on what you're trying to talk about with trust. So there's one, and I'm going to credit Mike Caro for this first one. There's a guy named Mike Caro who's a genius, mad scientist, poker player that came up with something called Caro's Book of Poker Tells, where if you follow that, you can almost half the time win at poker without ever looking at your cards. And one of the first axioms is that you can always trust an actor who does not know they are being observed. And that's an incredibly deep and I think absolutely true statement. But it might not be what you're trying to get at.
Well, can you say a little more about that? What do you mean? What do you mean about an actor that doesn't know?
An actor who doesn't know they are being observed will behave in a manner that is consistent with their beliefs. In pretty much pretty close to 100% of circumstances. I can't think of one. So basically, if you're going about your everyday life and you don't and you think you're not being watched, or you don't know that you are being watched, and you just assume that you're not being watched, then the motivations that inform your decisions are not ones of deceit. You don't have anyone to deceive because there's nobody observing you.
Right. Unless you think your life is a Truman Show.
Right with that, I mean, I think.
Did you say you don't have anyone to?
Yeah, there's no one else to deceive if you think you're not being observed.
There's no one else to deceive if you think you're
right.
not
So if
being
I said, so Tiger, what's your favorite dinner, right? And you know that I'm a hunter, and you might be like, oh, I love those venison backstraps, dude. Right? I might not necessarily trust that, but if I was to observe you and you don't know that you're being observed, and I watch you cook your favorite dinner, and you sit there and you say to yourself, "Oh, this is my favorite dinner. I love cooking this for myself," and you whip out the tofu pancakes for your favorite dinner. I can trust that you enjoy tofu pancakes,
So what if you're
right?
so what if you're observing them like much like a psychologist, right? And you're not. It's not like they're not in the glass cage, whatever. You're observing them as you're talking to them, which is what I do with people.
Yeah.
Every cue and every whatever gesture,
Yeah.
they could still sort of deceive you, even though they think, oh, they're not aware of your observation.
Why
right?
would they deceive you?
I mean, if they want to, like, it's not like they're just going to deceive you for no reason. But if their intent is to deceive you,
then they would act differently when you're watching them.
oh yeah, definitely.
They wouldn't act differently that when they think you're not watching them.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
That's right.
the murderer waits until he's not being watched to commit murder.
So we need to be able
if he wants to evade capture.
So in order to trust people, we have to be able to observe them when they don't think we're looking.
No, not necessarily. But if you do observe someone when they think they're not looking, you can trust that. You can trust what they're displaying in that moment.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Right. So it's not necessarily that you can't trust anyone else at any other time. But if you do observe someone and they think you're not looking, then that's when you can trust. Like when you're playing poker.
But this is the thing.
This is
the problem with that.
If it's not a guy's turn, right, and there's someone else on the other side of the table that everyone is making a bunch of noise, and everyone's looking at that person, and the conversation's about the person on the other side of the table, and the guy looks at his cards out of turn and then makes a face, you can or a hand gesture, you can trust that instinctive face or hand gesture if you think that the person thought they were not being observed when they made that face or hand gesture. But if it's the guy's turn to look at his cards and he looks at his cards and everyone's looking at him when he looks at his cards and he knows everyone's looking at him, the face that he makes cannot be trusted.
This is the thing. That's only I think it's really just specific to what is it, poker, right? Because you can have
it's not specific. It's universal. An actor that does not know that they are being observed has no reason to act deceitfully, because the only person they would be deceiving is themselves.
Well, this is the thing, right? Like, he may not be observed. He may not he doesn't have to be aware of being observed, right? But he can still act with a secondary motivation, right?
Oh yeah, so super professional poker players okay, sorry.
So he can act with a secondary motivation to sort of cover the primary motivation, and so he's still operating on deceit, even though he's not being observed, and he knows he's not being observed. So I do understand that, what you're talking about with regards, well, nobody's watching me, so I myself. But, if you've got really good con men or whatever, they really know how to hide their motivation. So I think when it really gets down to it, it's what's the person's objective? What's the primary objective? What do they want? What do they like? What are they looking to achieve and whatnot? And I think then you can just really assess trusting them or not, is what I would say.
Right. And I think that you're the president of the United States, for example, you should behave as though you're always being watched, because you probably are.
Oh yeah.
Every interaction you have with someone, no matter how private they may tell you it is, they could be wearing a wire, they're recording it with their phone in their pocket. Like, you're going to be a 24/7 actor.
Mm-hmm. But also that's why these secrets, when they leak out, or I was behind the scenes with them. Oh, the of what the guy did that was bad. That's all these secret tape kind of moments. That's why they're so damaging to a person's reputation. It's because everybody perceives that as the moment they were acting truthful. Right? So even if it's wrong, because then the guy knows he's always being watched, then it's still everybody kind of acts like when you're alone and you think you're not being watched, then that's when you're really being true. So I mean, I think it's a really brilliant theorem, but obviously it doesn't help you when you're dealing with people who are actors who know they're being watched.
So that works on like a. You go ahead.
So the second one that I have this is a really cool one, and it's based on an allegory. If you come to a crossroads, okay, and there's a man standing at the crossroads, and you know he's either from the town on the left or the town on the right, okay. One of the towns is filled with only people who always tell the truth, and the other town is filled with only people who always lie. What question can you ask the man to determine what town he's from?
Oh, could you say that again?
Okay.
It's an interesting one. I think I got it, but go ahead.
So you come to a crossroads. There's a man standing at the crossroads. There's two towns, a town of liars and a town of truth tellers. What question can you ask the man to determine which town tells the truth? Not to determine where he's from, but to determine which town tells the truth. Let's say you want to get to the town that tells the truth. That's your favorite place to be. What question can you ask the guy so that you will not be led astray?
You
And
can
he's
ask, you can
I just want to get to
which way is the town with the liars, and whatever he says, go the opposite direction.
just what is he?
The liar will point to the town that tells the truth, and
Wait,
the
no,
truth teller will
because
point. The only
What
question,
race are
I'll
you?
answer it for you so it doesn't take too long. The answer is you ask him where he's from, and everybody will always point to the town that tells the truth. And this is a trick this is a trick based on that allegory, and I don't know how I got to it, but it's a little bit of a non sequitur from that. But if you ask any salesman what's the best product, they're always going to say their own product, right? But if you observe a salesman, they will always compare their product to the best product out there.
But the truth teller will say the same thing.
The truth, if a salesman actually sells the best product, he will only highlight his own product.
No, I said the truth teller would say the same thing with the town.
That's right. A truth teller would point to the town with the truth tellers in it. Where are you from? I'm from there. Right. So a salesman will always point to the product. He will always point to the product that's the best.
Yeah, cops ask questions they already know.
A salesman, whether they're a liar or a truth teller, will always point to the product that's the best and say that
maybe I'm a little slow.
You ask questions.
The lying man point to the truth telling town.
If you ask him where he's from, yeah.
But the truth teller would say the same thing.
He said they're always going to point to the truth telling town. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
right.
I see. Yeah, get it.
Right. So one thing that I've noticed, and I'm not 100% sure the logic gets there from that allegory to my logic, but salesmen will always compare their product to the best product.
It's the two doors between the angel that lies and the angel.
Yeah.
Ask which door.
That one's harder.
What you do is you ask two separate people when you and they'll then see like the people that prosecute people, they'll ask questions they already know, and then they will ask. No,
that's not what I'm talking about at all. I mean, yeah, there's an old axiom that a good lawyer will never ask a question that he doesn't already know the answer to. What we're talking about is telling whether someone is telling the truth. Right? How do you know whether a person is lying or can be trusted? And you can always trust a salesman to point you to the best product, because all salesmen will compare their product to the best product on the market. Nobody compares their product to Nobody will say, if there's a.
That's
if
the
there's a
only way you can
crappy,
differentiate, though, is from one
if there's a
person.
crappy, you want to be associated with the best product, even if that's not your product. So salesmen will say, we're just like, our car is just as fast as a Mercedes-Benz C-Class, but it's $10,000 cheaper, right? They'll say, our product is just as effective as our cleaning product is just as effective as Tide dish detergent, but we don't have, harmful chemicals in ours, right? They'll always point to like the premium product that actually works, that actually is the desirable product, and compare themselves to that, because they're not going to put themselves up against something that's bad, because then you always get association with that.
You can't differentiate.
Yeah, I'm a little puzzled on that one.
I was just pointing out how to differentiate.
Yeah, it's a little bit puzzling how liars always point to the liar will always point to the city. We're from there.
Truth teller would do that too.
Yeah, exactly.
I can tell you a scenario how to differentiate. If somebody is telling the truth and somebody is lying, here's an example.
You can trust a liar if you ask him where he's from.
I'll give you an example of what you're saying. Like, let's say somebody went on two people went on a vacation and they came back, and what you do is you have them separate from one another, and ask them where you just ask them where did they go, yeah, and you ask them the same question, and then the questions you can tell if they align or not, because
it's a police tactic.
They wouldn't necessarily know which is the answer. So you and it could be minor details where it would be obvious. Of course, you'd know that you went on a plane or you went on a boat to get there. You know what I mean? One person might say one thing, if you bombard a bunch of questions, you're going to see differentiation.
You're talking about is to say something that's slightly untrue to get the person to correct you, because people love to correct.
You can do that. You can do that and tell the truth. You can mix it up.
Well, there's an interrogation method where you interrogate one person, all right, and then you gather the facts, and then you go to the other person, and then you twist the facts so you can see if the other person.
And you tell truths and lies.
Yeah, it reminds me of actually. Do you know
the differentiation?
Do you know how jury duty works when it comes to who gets selected and who doesn't?
No one seems to know. It seems to be very blurry as to like the details of it.
I think
if you're not in that,
you choose a jury, right?
Yeah, you choose it, but like the art of the I was just going to say the art of choosing is something that's kept in the dark for people that are not in that field.
So I am not advocating for this, nor do I say that you should do something along this, nor am I saying that this is the actual method that they're going to use when you have jury duty. But they do play mind games. So, for instance, one of the mind games could be they might look at everybody in the room and say, listen, we understand that we're taking time away from your busy lives. Who here, right, would actually like to be on a list so that if possible, they have the chance to go? Okay, you don't have to serve on the jury. Okay, and so then they gather from those people. That these people, if selected, they're going to go, hey, we're going to go through everybody and all that. And if you're one of those people that is, kind of on the fringe of not wanting to be here, we'll let you go. Those people on the list are guaranteed to come back and will serve on the jury, because they don't want people that want to stay. They want people that don't want anything to do with this case. It limits the possibility of having some biased person on the jury. Those who want to stay are most likely to be let go.
I see.
That's interesting.
They don't have an opinion one way or the other. Yeah,
exactly. They don't want people who want to serve on the jury. They don't want those people. If you're excited and you're eager to serve on the jury, they're going to look at you like, get the fuck out of here.
Isn't that like the military as well? If you turn up there and they ask you, why do you want to join the regiment or the army or something, and you say, well, I want to join because I like killing people, they're not gonna really take you. They're gonna think you're crazy.
Yeah, it depends
that.
on what country's army you're in. If
Maybe
you're in
the
the
Air
Marines,
Force.
they're gonna be like over there in infantry, sir.
Crazy.
Yeah,
They do that in America.
Straight up, dude. They're gonna send you to. You're like the
Straight
army.
up.
They're like,
Oh,
hey, the
oh,
Air Force. They
sniper
might be like,
school?
yeah,
Okay.
that's cool.
You're in.
You're going to infantry, son.
So
In
the
the,
third, so
I
my
guess-
third idea for who to trust is I'll try to make this one fast. Is based on, and again, this doesn't work in every situation, but it works in many situations. Is based on the idea of projection. If you get what I mean by projection, is that you can only conceive the way that we predict other people's behavior is by creating a model of what we think they're thinking. Essentially, that probably oversimplifies it, but it creates an artifact called projection, which is our own motivations can be seen by what names we call other people, essentially, right? Or what motivations we ascribe to other people, because we can only ascribe to other people the motivations that we ourselves can imagine. So if you can't imagine a motivation being different, then you can't call someone that name, right? Does that make sense? So somebody that's really trustworthy, somebody that can't imagine deceiving somebody as a way of being, as a way of living life, somebody that can't imagine.
I get what you're saying. A projector would say you didn't solve that puzzle because they couldn't solve the puzzle.
Like that give a lot of trust. And if you encounter somebody that gives you way more trust than you think you deserve, it's way higher likelihood than not that person is trustworthy.
I kind of agree with Nivik on that. That sounds to me like jealousy in a lot of cases.
Like jealousy?
Like people believe that Shakespeare didn't write all his plays because they can't imagine having written all those plays.
It has something to do with themselves and narcissism.
No, jealousy is not the same thing as projection. Projection is something that you can't help.
Projection's a part of it.
You say that.
You saw the puzzle that I saw the puzzle that you couldn't solve, and so you make the assumption that you cheated because if you were in that same situation, that's what you would have done. You would have
That's
cheated.
an argument from incredulity. He's talking about projecting, like
right.
You're projecting the things that have more to do with
shoes.
you, the things that more have to do with you onto another person.
Right. So projecting
that your
incapabilities.
incapabilities.
Just that for me to predict what you do, I have to create in my mind a model of your behavior.
Yeah.
And the only behaviors that I can model are ones that I actually have at least some intrinsic small motivation for in my own mind, or ones that I have contemplated.
Right? It's a hard one.
Yeah, there are different forms of projection.
So somebody that's truly trustworthy and cannot deceive others, and there are people like that, will necessarily project their trust there. So they'll project their own attitude of not deceiving people in their models of other people's behavior, and so they'll give more trust than you. They'll give you more trust than you might think you deserve. You might be a stranger, and they trust you to whatever.
There's two forms of projection.
So the most trustworthy people are quite often people who give you more trust than you deserve. Right? And so
Graham, could you take the reins for a minute? Sorry.
So those are my three, and thanks for listening. And I'd love it if someone could shoot some holes in those so I can refine my ideas.
Well, we do project ourselves in those methods, but what's interesting is we often just assume that they're ignorant when we wonder why they're choosing differently, I think.
I just wanted to ask, so you're saying if someone gives you more trust than you deserve, then it's most likely that they are a trustworthy person because they are projected their self or their virtue of not conceiving, not being able to deceive onto you because they thought, well, he may be just like me, so why not? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's almost exactly what I'm saying. And I'm not saying that it's necessary that person is trustworthy, but people who cannot deceive are also I'd say more often than not trust others more than they should.
Yeah.
And they
I
got
agree.
negative people that capitalize off of that when they see your naiveness.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, it's not necessarily naivety. Some of it's just game theory. Is you give somebody trust and you hope they act in reciprocity. And even if you're not naive, you can still give somebody more trust than they deserve, and wait until that's reciprocated.
You don't reward a
before
negative with a
you actually
positive.
risk anything with the person.
You don't reward a negative with a positive. If a person is
Who
being
doesn't?
negative and being deceitful, then you don't give them. I'm kind of like that too. Like if a person gives me a negative and lied to me, and I something that I know that's true, I'll just throw a lie back at them, and act the same way. I wouldn't reward
me
him.
too.
I'd reward him with a negative. I wouldn't reward him with a positive. I wouldn't reward
like
him
when
with
someone
being.
straw mans me, I'll come back with an absurd claim as a retort to the straw man.
But if you can be successful, whether in the corporate world or in the legal world as a lawyer, or as someone was talking about in the world of the politicians, when they don't show their real self, and when they think they're alone, they show their real self. If you can be successful being deceitful, why is that not taught? Why is it that officially we say it's bad, but we know that within certain industries, there are people who are becoming successful by being deceitful, but we say it's wrong, you shouldn't do it, but we know that people who do it and get away with it, the reward is they achieve success.
Well, yeah. I mean, if everybody's lying, I guess you have to lie too. It's only fair.
Yeah,
So
but
you should be a liar.
the skill to lie and not get caught, and to be successful setting up a business, or be successful as a lawyer, or be successful as a politician by lying, and
Then
not
it's deserved.
Yes, but
A lot of people who lie, can I say one thing? A lot of people who lie go that route of doing things underhanded because they're not capable, knowledge and intellect wise, in order to go the straight route. So they cop out and they do negative things. But if you can do it, if you can do all those things underhanded and get away with it, if you can walk the walk, then fine. But if you can't, that's.
But my question is, why is it that officially in society we don't teach that as something that people should do, even though we know that there are many people who do it and achieve success?
You shouldn't.
They don't achieve success.
If you're skilled,
they don't achieve success. They don't achieve success, bro.
Like we're talking like one of the examples I was giving is when politicians do it, whether it's someone who becomes a president or a prime minister.
Or the CEO of CNN.
Yes. And they achieve
lie.
success.
So the old mantra is they lie. We know they lie. They know that we know that they lie. We know that they know that we know that they lie. They know that we know that they know that we know that they know that they lie. Yet still they lie.
And they get away with it, and it's like.
But I mean, seriously though, does anybody really think that politicians? I mean, politics is a unique example because we're the ones that are voting these bastards in office, and we're not demanding their trustworthiness. We're not demanding their accountability. But if you look at them, do they look happy to you, or do they look like soulless, lifeless, limp-wristed, like empty suits? Because to me, I really think that they look like they'd rather be dead. A lot of them.
Can I ask a hypothetical? Yeah. Suppose if your dream in your life was to be the fastest person to ever live, and that's all you wanted to do, like riding a bike or jogging a distance run, and you wanted fulfillment in finally reaching that goal, and you drug people, you meet a person in the alley, you hit their kneecaps, and you do all of, or you throw a person off a cliff, and then when the race comes, you hop in a car and then you go drive straight to the finish line. Are you going to really feel like you were successful?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I hear where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, so there's a famous example of this, and he just died yesterday, actually, Bernie Madoff. Right? How much money did the guy steal? $60 billion. And he spent the last 10 years of his life in prison. Everyone hates him. He lost all his money. He would have been still in prison if he lived to be 160. He got a divorce. His son killed himself after turning his father in. And he said, while he was sitting in prison, that he was the happiest he ever was in his life because he no longer had to constantly worry about getting caught. He spent his whole life looking over his shoulder. It's like it's just not success. Like, I don't buy this success equals money, success equals.
You know, somebody once asked me that
temporary
question,
glory
by
in
the
the
way.
world, right?
Someone asked me that question, by the way, like, if you saw a person and they had money and nice car and all of that stuff, wouldn't you be resentful? And I go, no, I wouldn't be. And he's like, get out of here. That's bullshit. And I said, my success would be through that person's failure. So me caring about that person, so my goal would be more about wanting that person to fail than wanting to do what I have to do in order to achieve those things. So it would be about the person. It wouldn't be about, you know, you know, it wouldn't be about thinking about what I have to logically do and factually do in order to achieve those things. It would be about my resentment and envy and, you know, and not focusing on the things that I have to do, but probably more likely focusing on my resentment of that person in seeing success through their failure and in doing things to trip them up in order to feel better, because my emotions based off of jealousy. It's not really based off of how to do the things that person did in order to achieve those things.
Just want to get a couple other people. Is anyone, let's see, Canadians muted. Chick or Pang, any thoughts?
Hi, I just jumped in, so I'm just going to listen for a little while. Thanks, though.
All right. Well, one thing I was also thinking about, how do we know who to trust? It's kind of like this passage in the Bible where they ask, well, how do we know if a guy is a prophet? It says, and by your fruits ye shall know them. Basically, if what they say comes true, then we know that they're a prophet and we can trust them.
Does that work?
Now, of course, that's fraught with a bunch of holes, because when prophets make prophecies and they don't come true, they just get duct taped and reinterpreted or ignored.
But a lot of times there'd be like a little nugget of truth in a lot of the claims they make, and that'll be like a sign. You know, they make a billion claims, and then there'd be like a little nugget of truth, and that validates everything.
I think that by their fruits you shall know them is essentially the same as Mike Caro's theorem of poker there. So you can tell if a person is good by watching their actions when they don't know that they're being observed, or that they don't know that they're being evaluated. So it's that, you know, that thing from the Bible, to me it means, you know, how do you know if somebody's a racist? It's not whether they have a racist thought or a racist idea. It's by how they treat other people in their lives, right? It's
right. Well, it's especially not whether or not they have a woke Twitter bio.
Right. Yeah. So how do you know if a person is a truth teller or someone that's trustworthy? It's, you know, they act in a consistent, and they act in a manner that it doesn't seem to matter to them that you're observing them.
Well, there's a method you can go about.
Right.
You can, like, undercover boss. You can act like a peon, and you're really the owner, you know, and you're coming in and you work alongside somebody and you see how they work. And if they start being nasty to you and they start being rude to you and they start cutting corners and you're just messing up your. But people do that stuff. Like, they have spies that people that go on the inside and see what's going on.
Yeah, I was actually just reading about that yesterday, like how they determine discriminatory lending practices in mortgages. They'll have the government will have fake buyers go in and inquire about housing and fill out the application, and have people of different backgrounds fill it out with the similar credit and similar income. And they'll find that the bank is lending to one group at a disproportionate rate despite having similar credit score and everything. So I guess that's an example of that, where the bank thinks they're not being watched.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so if you busted a bank like that, then that's a really good sign, right? That they're actually a racist bank.
Yeah. It's really hard to get away with now because now we have like a lot more regulations in place and there's a lot more oversight of that kind of thing. But yeah, in general, it's possible. And if you could prove it, I mean, you can sue the hell out of those banks. And
Really?
oh yeah, and the banks could go bankrupt with lawsuits like that if you actually could prove that they were not lending to whatever group, what they call a protected class based on like race, religion, national origin, sex, that kind of thing. And they were not lending to people because of it. It would be an enormous, not to mention it would hurt their image a lot. Let's see. So Canadian is in the chat and deafened as per usual.
Is this on YouTube?
I think it is, yeah.
That's so weird.
What?
Why would you go in the chat and mute and deafen yourself?
He does that every time.
He must be in the YouTube chat, and maybe if he wants to talk, he'll unmute himself.
Yeah. So what this is leading up to for me is this vaccine. And I, for one, I know this is my discussion, so I'm just supposed to be the host. I'm not supposed to inject my opinion into these things, but I feel like the crowd is small enough where I can do that. I feel that we're living in almost like a religious country at this point when it comes to this vaccine. And that I just think that a lot of people do not really believe what they're saying about the vaccine, and they are just saying it because it is the in thing that they're supposed to be saying about it. Like you got a bunch of people that think, oh, we need to take this vaccine because we've got to get on with our lives and we've got to get back to normal. And they think that it's the thing that will get us back to normal. And then we've got a bunch of people that think it's going to be a repeat of the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, or it's just a placebo or whatever. And so I'm trying to parse out, how do we know what to trust on this particular case? Because it seems to be at the moment like a really country dividing issue, at least in the United States.
It's politicized. Nobody trusts anything. They have their own, they inject their political biases into it. So, but I mean, yeah, you can't be thinking like, well, we take care of the virus by just praying to God instead of, I mean, I'm not trying to knock religion, but that you need to approach things with science to take care of the problem.
Well, this is going to be my skeptical side coming out, not anti-vax side. Please do not misunderstand me. But what I am getting from all these powers that be when it comes to the vaccine, I'm not hearing anyone say that it's going to stop me from getting the virus. I'm not hearing anyone say that it's going to stop me from getting hospitalized, or even that it's going to allow our lives to go back to normal, because everybody who's in power, Biden, Fauci, the media, they all seem to keep saying, well, yeah, I mean, you can get vaccinated, but make sure you still wear a mask everywhere and you socially distance and you quarantine and all these things. And I'm like, it's just such a bleak message to give to people if they actually want them to return to normal life. Like, I'm sitting here, I haven't gotten vaccinated yet. I'm sitting here listening to this message and be like, well, why the hell would I want to get vaccinated if nothing about my life is allowed to change?
The right things the left is using.
Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy at all. Like there's some people that you can't trust, and I think you can narrow down. Sometimes it's easier to narrow down people that you can't trust. And like, for example, you can see what they said when they knew they were being watched, and see if there's a conflict with reality, with what their actual motives were. So the Fauci, for example, you can't trust him because as soon as the virus lockdown thing started, he told everybody not to wear a mask. He said normal people shouldn't be wearing masks at this point. And later it came out what he really meant was, oh, we actually just want to save all the masks for the hospital workers. But that's not what he came out on TV and said, right? So obviously he had a motive, which was to make sure that hospital workers had enough PPE. But he didn't come out and say that. He said, this virus is not bad enough for you to wear a mask, and masks don't work anyway. To try to trick you into doing what he wants.
And now every time he's
a person that can't be trusted.
And now every time he's on television and they're asking him like, so when are we going to get back to normal life? Please, when can I do something like a human being? He's always like, well, it's a good question. Yeah, I know it's a good question. And he's not giving an answer to it. And I'm just proceeding to get more pissed.
Right, but if he comes out with a fact, right? If he comes out with something and there's a fact, and he's just presenting a fact, he's got evidence for it, and he presents a fact, he presents some evidence. I think you can trust that fact and that evidence, right? But then when the commentary comes, therefore society needs to do this, that's the point where you say, okay, maybe I should question this person's motivations.
Like even Biden, he's another empty suit. He is just there making political statements because he's obviously been vaccinated and he has access to the top medical care on Earth. He's wearing a mask everywhere he goes. I'm like, what is the point? This is again just me. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to turn into
that
the
guy's gonna die in a
Eliyahu
minute now.
The Eliyahu rants variety hour. But I'm just at a loss here. I've just become so distrustful of these of the elites here.
Don't feel bad about it. There's a lot of people in our society that are fed up with what are we on now? 62 weeks of 2 weeks to slow the 2 weeks to flatten
the curve.
62 weeks of 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I'm living in a hotel room right now. I have to get special permission to go use the gym alone in the hotel gym.
Yeah, it's the same thing in my apartment complex. We've got a fitness center, and it's limited to 5 people at a time, and you have to reserve your spot.
Yeah.
And you're only allowed a certain amount of time per day. And it used to be that if you were vigorously exercising, I guess on a treadmill, you didn't have to wear a mask. And then enough residents complained, and then they changed it. So now even running on a treadmill, you have to wear a mask. And I go walking by there, and I see people on the treadmills, and they're wearing masks while they're running. And I'm like, am I crazy? Like, what world do I live in? Who thinks that this is okay? I go for a walk in the woods, and there's somebody running by with a mask on. Like, what? Like,
yeah.
Have we all lost our minds?
So the right believes that that's using the virus politically with an ulterior motive. It's not really about the virus. And the things that they say that you should and you shouldn't do, it's not really about the virus, right? It's about something else.
It's about it's funny, the only time the right believes a politician is when she says, "Never let a good crisis go to waste."
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's the only thing I've ever believed that Nancy Pelosi said is never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, guess what? She's living up to that. So,
but
how do you know who to trust? What have these people done in reciprocity for the trust that you've given them?
They well, let's think. If I'm talking about these specific elites, I get nothing. I get nothing. And as for, go ahead, Chick.
Oh, they've compared themselves against Trump enough times to say, look, we're not Trump. Look, we're not Trump. Enough where people go, oh, it's okay then. It's awful. If you watch CNN, there's still, I shake my head. If I walk by the TV, they're still going on about, oh, what's Trump up to? I don't know if it's constant. It seems to be every time I listen, but it's interesting.
No, I don't know what you're subjecting yourself to watching CNN unless you're just
no.
stuck in airports all day.
No, it's playing in my parents' living room. Unfortunately, I don't live on my own anymore, so I'm camping out with them. But yeah, it's interesting.
Why do you think they do that?
Easy point.
Compare everything to Trump.
Why do they keep
well,
just on and on about Trump? He's
That's
out of office.
It's my
and-
second. It's my second reason to trust somebody.
Yeah. Well, I know CNN. They that's where they were getting all their ratings from. And what was it? Project Veritas just exposed one of the high-end, high-level texts from CNN, disclosing a lot of their propaganda. I mean, I heard this on Timcast. I've heard it in a couple other places too. If you YouTube it, even some local news channels, I guess, were disclosing this as a real news story.
I think Bruno put it best when it came. I think it was Bruno. It was about motive, and what we clearly hear is, especially when it comes to the media, is that their motive is to win. They want to win. You know, they want to win the ratings. They want to win for party that they're being supported, their demographics party. Like, it's nothing to do with truth and validity. It just has everything to do with the motive of ratings. You know, and you see this coming from Fox News too.
Yes,
and Fox
exactly.
News, MSNBC. Yep. These people they want your attention. That's what makes them money. Oh, truth is out the window.
But there's something deeper, and it's with my second reason to trust somebody, is that, or is it the third one? That not the projection one, but the one with the parable with the guy that always points to the city that tells the truth.
That's the second one. Is
that they, in order to be successful, they have to compare themselves to Trump, because Trump is actually the guy he's the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room, right? He's the one with the ideas that shake up the box in our country, or at least he's the one that brought them to us. They might not have all been his ideas in the first place, but he's certainly front and center with them. And he's really actually the only one that's been a leader in our country in the last quite some time, right? Because
I don't know why
he is, because everybody's pointing at him. Everybody wants to associate with him, whether it's to say, I'm more truthful than him, I'm less orange than him, I am more moderate than him, I'm more compassionate than him. I'm just as good of a leader as Trump, but I don't lie. Right? That's all this. It's like all the salesmen pointing to the premium product. It's the same. It's the same exact thing.
Oh yeah, and Trump's doing the same thing. I mean, I don't really know. I personally don't have a reason why I should trust Trump any more than I should trust Biden. Why I should trust either of them, because they both just seem they seem to both be extraordinarily power hungry at any expense.
I'm saying that you should trust Trump because everybody else is pointing at him. Everyone points to the truth. That's what people do. They will point you to the right path.
Isn't it
kind of
funny
whether they are truth tellers or liars? They will point you to the right path.
Isn't it kind of funny? Isn't it kind of funny that a lot of people are pointing to the things that he did right, the things that he was actually correct on? Like, I've heard so many Democrats be like, "Well, I mean, he was right for pointing this out and doing this and doing that." Yeah, but you didn't say that when he did it. you're the one calling him an idiot.
But they were
When
still,
we,
but
when
they
we
were still
start, we
pointing
started
at him,
tearing
calling him
apart
an idiot.
immigration, when we started tearing apart, trade with China, when we started tearing apart the Middle East, when we started digging into these things and making the right calls to start working on them, it was that to me was like, yeah, he's doing the right things, but everyone's just mad because of who he is.
Is it just because of his personality?
Perhaps it's a very it's very easy for me to not trust him, or at the very least to not stand him when he speaks.
What do you think of Bernie? What do you think of Bernie?
I think Bernie.
Me?
Well, see, here's the thing: is that I think Bernie follows in the
Isn't
Dr.
he the
Doolittle's third part of Trust, where it's like I wouldn't do the things he's doing, so I just think he's naive.
I can trust that he believes that they are right, and I can trust that he wants to do them. But I don't trust the ideas themselves. I think the ideas themselves.
So Bernie compared to Trump is right and Bernie's wrong.
Well, not
Depends
exactly.
on the topic and the subject, and Bernie and Trump could both agree on it.
And there's a lot of subjects where Bernie seems to be, absolutely right about a lot of things, and I have a hard time thinking about them because I usually block them out.
Yeah,
I trust
Bernie. Yeah, it's like I trust Bernie in saying, "Hey, we have a healthcare issue." I don't trust him in how he wants to fix it.
Yeah, that's about where his accuracy runs out.
Well, what's he really trying to go for? I think Medicare for all. I could even as a sort of righty libertarian. I'm.
It's a terrible.
You believe Bernie's far left.
Except for the making government bigger, it kind of
it's
just like health insurance. It's just like saying health insurance is a public service, and if our goal is to have everyone have health care, then I can't say that that's wrong. It might not be the most efficient thing to do, but I can't say that
right.
It's wrong.
And if you just want to say to hell with the quality of the health care, as long as everyone has it, hooray for us.
Why don't you just put the money into the people's hands, and then they can make their own damn healthcare decisions?
Well, yeah, well, that's what I would prefer. But the money's not in my hands. Right. The money gets taken out of my paycheck before I see it, and people that I didn't negotiate with for my prices are negotiating with my service provider for the prices of services that I'm not allowed to see until after they provide the services.
So Bernie's too far left.
So I mean, that's my
what
right now.
What if you had a savings card, right, where X amount of money got put in there, X amount of money got put in there by the government, and said you pick your own fucking plan, get your own private doctor.
That sounds like a much better idea than Medicare for all.
It's like UBI.
Well, it's kind of like UBI, but it's like UBI for healthcare. It can only be used for healthcare programs in your private.
So how do you fix the health?
I don't know. I think the problem with our healthcare. I think the problem with our healthcare system is only on the supply side. I don't think there's a.
How do you fix it?
I don't think people need subsidies.
I think Grim's idea is a good start.
Yeah, and you reverse the issue. Like, this isn't my idea. This is actually good centrist ideas from the political right and some from the political left. But it's more of a centrist idea of just saying, well, just put the money into the person's hand and they'll go make their own healthcare decisions, and they'll get a private practice doctor or something where they can have a personal doctor that actually knows them. You need to know your doctor. If you don't have a personal doctor, right, that you're consistently seeing, and you don't have somebody looking out for your health, that's a fucking professional. Like, you think you're a professional, but you're really not, right? Our bodies fool us all the time. I think I got this, but I don't have this and all that. We have instinct, but we need somebody that can look over and be with us for years. You need somebody like that, and you need to be able to pay them. And yeah,
we're acknowledging
dumping money into a healthcare system that's completely.
How did it get that way? We're acknowledging the system's messed up and it needs to be fixed. How did it got that way?
Because of the free market, honestly. I'm a complete capitalist person, but we're one of the few countries where we just kind of let the healthcare system be a free market, and so we have hospitals that make ridiculous amounts of money.
I think it's only
we have prescription pills that are advertisement on TV, which you don't find anywhere else, and they're not regulated by the government, which in every other country, all prescriptions and the way that they're delivered and the way they're advertised are regulated.
I don't believe in this completely capitalist one way or completely or the other way. I think there's a mixture of things within society, and that's a good thing. You know, there's some social aspects and there's some capitalist aspects, and I think they both complement each other. I don't think it's about just having one thing one way versus only having one thing the other way.
You can have like if
I think that's
if
an
everybody
issue.
had money to go spend on a healthcare program, there'd be plenty of healthy competition to bring down prices.
Now that there wouldn't, it's so highly regulated. I think just the fact
Yeah,
that
that's
it's
exactly-
not, the
yeah.
fact that it's not a free market is what makes the prices so high. Like for example,
Exactly.
I have sleep apnea, and I want to go buy a new CPAP mask, right? Because I don't like the mask that I have. I freaking want to rip
don't
off
wanna
my
die
face
tonight.
every time. So I want to go get a new CPAP mask, and I can't just go to a person that makes CPAP masks and buy one. I have to go to a primary care physician and get a referral to a sleep study place, and then I have to go to the sleep study place and they do a baseline sleep study, which costs $1,000, and then they say, "Oh, do you want to try this mask?" And then they do another sleep study with that mask on, which costs $1,000, and then they write me a prescription for the mask that they titrated, and I can go to the only one of two companies in the entire country that have been licensed to make a freaking a piece of rubber that I put on my face. And that piece of rubber costs $250 for something that, I don't know what
You don't know
mask
any of
costs, like
those people,
and the
and those
CPAP
people
itself
don't know
is
you.
thousands. I don't know them. They don't know me. I can't negotiate with them on price. I can't even go find someone else that
a lot
does
of
it
time,
because they're not allowed to make it if
a lot of
they
time,
want
people
to.
interfere with the politics of things and try to manipulate things in trying to have things slant towards them in governing in business and politics. Some people say like, yeah, we should just have a fear-free capitalist open market system, but a lot of times that route isn't taken, and things try to be done in a way where
do you know what a free market is? It's the black market. The black market is the free open market. That's free market. A version of that, but where everybody has a business card. It's not pretty. You need regulation, and you need to have some systems that allow capitalization to flourish, right? And I think that's what our country does. And I think that's what every country
there's
does.
crony capitalism, there's capitalism.
But you're trying to
crony
explain
capitalism.
If you're talking about a black market, I mean, you're also talking about, it's a little unfair, I think, to compare a truly free market to something like a black market because you don't have the rule of law.
I was trying to put an
there.
asterisk in the corner, yes.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah.
See, America is designed of a check and balance. It's got one thing on one and it's got the other on the other side. And there's kind of like it's about mutual. It's a bit of a compromise between one thing. I mean, between both things. I just don't. I mean, like, if somebody, it's kind of you don't want things to get outbounced in a way where the power gets too grown and then corruption happens and then things just, because I mean, like, if a company can rule the planet and snap its finger, it will do it, so you have to have a system.
Well, that's what's happening right now with this COVID vaccine. Like, all these big tech companies that are getting on board with this COVID passport, that just really frightens me. This whole, like, well, you're going to have to show your passport to walk into the grocery store. You're going to have to show your passport to go to a sporting event, or your passport to, I don't know.
Can I say one thing? Some people would say, well, if a company can dominate the planet, then so be it. It deserves it. But that company was given a chance within society in a deal. You know what I mean? It goes both ways. So you have to have consideration to one, and that thing has to have consideration to you. It's not all about you. Once you climb up the ladder or cross a bridge, you want to kick ladders, you want to burn bridges.
That's Obama's "you didn't build that" argument.
Oh, it's the worst.
These people are gonna ride COVID until it.
I'm talking about how society. I'm talking about maintaining a society, a functioning society, and if something helped you, then you shouldn't want to destroy whatever, and kicking ladders and burning bridges. And Okay, I get it. Like you built your stuff, but don't do things corrupting within government to f it up, because you don't want competition. And there's capitalism, there's crony capitalism.
I think just to shift the conversation a little bit, but where I think trust has the worst realm of trust is when you trust someone to tell you that you can't trust yourself. And I think that's the worst part of the use of trust. Is when you give up everything to somebody, you trust them, your instincts, right, are now being pushed aside. Right? Your mental capacity to understand the situation is reliant on a third party, because that third party is telling you that you can't trust yourself. And you find this in maybe religion, sure, but it's also in just like domestic partnerships. It's also in companies and businesses.
Hypothetically,
and just socially, it's just everywhere. It's insane.
I mean, like you're using the system, so you have to have consideration for the system as a person that's a capitalist that created you. Like what if what do you think about privatizing the fire department?
Privatizing. I'm keeping it more on trust, but
they can say, you know what, we're gonna let this burn down unless you bend the rules for us. That's the kind of thing with the. I think that's what's going on with the post office.
Most of the fire departments are already privatized.
Well, that was my attempt to hop onto a new subject, but
sorry.
So like if a place is going to burn down, that is that's in an area that is not not of wealth, then it should just burn.
Maybe couch the question or frame the question as a matter of trust.
Do you trust the fire department? Do you trust the police?
Well,
and do you think, and why do you think you should trust them?
Well, they are. I mean, if we elect that in place because we elect the reps and they look over that, so they're of you.
Oh, so accountability, right? They have accountability.
Yeah, you answer to the people.
They're accountable. Yeah, they're absolutely accountable. But
that's the thing with
what happens when you see the
office
system of like police officers, right, who get off of doing maybe some crimes and things like that, and you go, well, this system now does not hold police accountable. Now they just get 3 weeks docked with pay when it comes to accidentally killing some kid. Some people look at that as I've lost faith and I've lost trust into the system to be accountable.
So are firefighters the same as police in terms of they're overseen by people you elected?
Firefighters, I believe, are elected. Yeah, the not the firefighter, but the fire marshal.
In many cases, the fire marshal is elected, and in many cases, the mayor
or chief
of a city would appoint a fire chief or something like that.
And maybe, yeah. So, I mean, everything from the top down is democratic. So at least it's got that.
So I think Nivik made an argument that you should trust the fire department because they're of you, and I think that makes sense to some extent. But then, is it also not true that the police are of you in exactly the same way?
Well, yeah, you put pressure on them, and you change. You force change. That's America's history. It's done that.
Is there anything that you could trust somebody with just because they're human, and you have that in common?
Well, I mean, people, they're not always 100%. You have levers to put pressure on them. Now, if the person don't have your interests at heart, it's more about who they cater to. Then
I would say I trust them to socialize to their best ability because we are as social creatures innately.
that's my point right there. I mean, that's what society is. It's social. That's
Yeah,
what civilization is. It's so. I mean, like, so that word that the attack on that word, I just don't get it. That's just naturally the case.
What do you
Unless
mean
people are
attack
talking
on
about
that word?
well, no, I'm saying the people
What word are we
social.
attacking? I don't understand. Socialism? Well, socialism is an idea of how to run an economics within a large group.
My point is that they're just natural social aspects within
Yeah,
society.
we're natural social creatures. Like we're more social than
Society itself is
arguably
social.
any other type of mammal on the planet.
And I'm not against one thing, or I'm not against another. I think that there should be balance within things, and so I'm not this 100% viewpoint of, because people are just too fixated in their view. You can't just be, because I mean that's what America is thinking about it can't be about one thing or another, because people are confused about what to choose and how the country should be run. And it's like, it was more about secularism. It's not about you being for one or the other. It's about everything mattering. So I'm not just capitalist or socialist. I think that they work together, and they're mutually they're complementing.
I don't know how we went from being a social creature to socialism, but the fact that we are social, right? The fact that we are heavily social, I think, is a way that we try to establish trust is through our language and actually through our mannerisms with our body. So there's actually,
I'm just saying there's some
and
aspects of socialism within society.
when you sit down at a table with somebody and you're talking to them, it's actually best to sit to the left of them than across from them. You sit across from them, actually an innate ability of possible conflict or confrontation. You sit to the left of somebody or to the right of somebody, it actually establishes more trust. Okay? And if you shake their hand, you come in with your palm up, shows more trust than with your palm down. People tend to look at the left side of the face more for the mannerisms and the eyebrows when initially meeting somebody to see how the eyebrows react. All these things are innate in us. And like I mentioned earlier about judging somebody within 15 seconds. 15 seconds, you're making assumptions of somebody. I think it's judging in 5 and assumptions in 15. Like, it's crazy. And these are subconscious movements, right?
It's not just trust, though. These are reps. You have the people on one side, and you have the those who they represent. At the top, it's a balance. They
I don't know what that means, but I'm talking about interacting with somebody. I don't know what any of that means. I'm talking about interacting with another human being, regardless of statute. I'm talking about these are interesting things in people that we're developing trust just by meeting somebody instantly, subconsciously. We're trying to establish a grounding of community, a grounding of this trust, and that we're together. And there is something innate in us that is trying to do this, right? Because I don't think about these. I don't be like, okay, well, I'm not going to judge them in 5 seconds. Okay, well, you are. It's gonna happen. You need to let it flow. What you do with that information, I think, counts. To Dr. Doolittle's point, I'm a huge card player too, Dr. Doolittle. So I know what it's like to play poker. I know what it's like to look at people and see the tells and see what they think that is trying to do a tell, but not a tell. Most people don't fake tells. Most people just kind of let it roll, as you would probably agree. They just let it go. They focus on trying to suppress things like tells, but everybody has some mannerisms. You have to try to figure out what that is, and when you're talking to somebody, and then to Bruno's point, it came to motive. You know, what's their motive? Do we have a common goal? Okay, and then I'm going to put myself in your shoes to see how you're achieving that goal. And if it's the same way I achieve that goal, trust is bound. People want something to unite over, okay? and that helps build that trust. I think it's quite interesting. Sorry for the ranting and sorry for cutting you off, Nivik. I think you're on a little different topic, Nivik, when it comes to like hierarchies and
When I was talking about like people, I think people like to. I think I was talking about things being social. And you say, well, you know, you can't completely trust the government. And I said, well, the government's the people, and they represent the people, and that those things that I'm talking about, the reps oversee those things, and there's things to be, there's levers to be pressured there, you know, in order to get change.
Well, let's see.
So there's a bit of a check and a balance.
Congressional approval rating as of March 29th, 2021, roughly 36%, averaging around 35. So I would say trust is not there.
Yeah, I'm just giving you the logic of the framework of how things are set up in the people and having reps and them answering to the people. And where you want change to certain things, you put pressure on those who you put in office, who you elect. But I get that there's crookedness still, regardless, because politicians try to do what they got to do to be corrupt. But I mean, yeah, I mean that's the history of America. It wasn't, things weren't always perfect, and people had to push back for change.
Grim, I think you were onto something earlier that I wanted to hear more of. Maybe you got sidetracked, but like, what do you think is a good way to, or what do you think are some good techniques to build trust with people? You know, I don't know about, you know, when you first meet or when you're having repeated interactions, or even people that you've never met and you never will meet except for through Discord chats online. What do you think is a good techniques for building trust? Because I think that was the second half of the question that we haven't even started to address yet.
That's a good question, Doolittle. I think what we're doing is collecting data, information, and we have an idea that I think we could call it this. Let's just call it this label of hope. I don't know if you guys have talked about hope yet, but so the difference between hope and something like faith being the excuse you would give for believing something when there is no good reason to give, or else you would give that good reason. But then there's hope, which a lot of theologians might say, you, Mr. Atheist, have faith as well. You have faith that your marriage is going to work out or your friendship is going to work out. But those are different things. When you get into, like for me, when I get into a relationship, I have hope that is informed by the evidence of reality. This hope metaphor about that person I'm in a relationship with, that, you know, I hope for these things to happen and these things. I hope for good things. Obviously, we know that bad things can happen, but we hope for the good things. And I think what happens when people start losing trust in people is they start losing hope that they can rely on that person and what they're saying. So I think hope has to come into this conversation, a general conversation about how do we know who to trust. You can ask yourself. I think it's a good test to ask yourself, how much hope do you have that this person or this idea is going to lead to something good? And if you feel like you don't have enough hope, maybe you are having a hard time finding the justifications to have hope.
Travis, why would you technically not call that faith also? Is it just the implication of religion in there versus secular only?
No. So the definition of faith, the way I see faith used, is when someone doesn't have good reason to give, they will give the reason of faith as this ultimate adherence to this idea, absent a good reason. Because if you have a good reason, Chick, as to why you went to the grocery store, well, you needed groceries or you needed a specific grocery item, you would give the reason as to why you went to the grocery store. You wouldn't say, I went because of faith. So I think what faith does is, when it comes time for people to give their demonstration of why they believe a God exists, most of the time when I've talks with religious people who have a faith-based religious belief, you get to a certain point where they don't have an answer outside of saying, well, it's just my faith, or I have faith that this is the case. It's not that they have hope. They have faith that it is actually true. Or else they would say, well, I hope it's true, because there are some people like that. But I'm talking specifically about the faith-based, the people who have religious convictions that are faith-based. So, and then I'll give an example of me, let's say, being in a relationship. The good reasons I can give, let's say, for getting into a relationship with a woman is, we get along really well. We make each other laugh. We have great sex. We, the things that are important to each of us in a relationship, we seem to sync on that level. So those are the good reasons I would give. And then if someone was to say, well, you have faith that it's going to work out in the end, I would say, no, I'm not going to make a positive claim about how it's going to work out. I hope things work out and we both have a good time, even if it doesn't last forever. But I've given you my good reasons as to why I'm doing this. And then as far as what I'm willing to say about the future or the unknown at this point, I would say, I have some hope that we maximize each other's well-being and we have a fruitful relationship.
So, Travis, you say people who are religious, things that are beyond their understanding, they just use that as a substitute to explain things.
No, I said people who have a faith, who invoke the faith term in the religious sense. They have what they believe to be their good reasons leading up to the point when you get to where the God of the gaps must be inserted. And then they will say, okay, well, at that point, I just have faith that that's where God is. And then I say, well, why can't you just hope that that's the case? No, that's not the way faith works. You're supposed to honor your God and have no God before him in a lot of religions.
So if you think something's a certain way and come to a conclusion and you're saying it's through God, and what person, and when you interact with a person and why they think that way and they say it's through faith.
So I know we don't want to be hung up on this particular part, but it sounds like hope is in accordance with the evidence. Like hope is more of a passive, go with the flow. oh, I hope this will work out, you know. Whereas faith seems to be more of a courage based, like
So faith
against
would,
the evidence,
yeah. So
where it's a little more difficult.
faith would be uh, when someone asks, why do you believe that this God exists, the faith-based believer will say, because I have faith. And they are asserting that as their good reason. But
I get that.
the way I the way I define it is that if they had a good reason, they would give their good reason. They wouldn't have to create a word to unload all of their requirements to demonstrate their positive claim on this blanket term of faith. So they would give a reason like, you know, I looked at the standard model of quantum mechanics and I think the Higgs boson is what God, or let's say the thing that makes up the Higgs boson is
I have a theory on that.
Where God is. Don't interrupt.
I have
me,
a theory on that.
Just make sure you let people finish. Go ahead.
I think that when it comes to trying to understand things that are beyond understanding, you have developed a certain psychological emotion when it comes to those things that you don't understand. And you're thinking through other things that are not of fact or logic, but it's based on how you feel.
Yeah, so
and
in those moments,
when you have certain things that you interact with, that's just a natural human trait. You feel certain ways. Where if you are void of one thing, if you're void of the one part of the mind that is about gathering knowledge and rationalizing in order to have understanding, you end up by default just naturally having the emotional side of how you feel when it comes to things. And you are, probably it's subconscious, you're really acting off of emotional feelings in regards to things. So it comes from somewhere, you know, in why people think certain ways that they do is what I'm interested in. And why would you say, well, this goes this way, and you go, well, why? Because God said, and you just have faith. And I think that there's something that explains that.
Yeah. So faith
psychologically, why a person is that way in the environment. If you can rationalize the environment that they're in, that will dictate their outcome and why they think that way. They're probably not that exposed to certain pieces of information or whatever, and you can rationalize, you know, kind of understand the psychology of the person and they're feeling a certain way. You could come to a conclusion in why they think one way or the other. Because if something is very custom to them, they actually say why they feel why you should do this or why you should do that instead of resorting to faith.
Go ahead, Doolittle. You were trying to get in there.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
back.
I was trying to say my take on faith is that it's a phenomenon that happens when you trust another person's judgment more than you trust your own reasoning. So it does seem to almost always come up on something that you can't prove with your own senses and with facts and information that are at hand. But somebody, you know, in the case of religious faith, it's usually a person that you trust a lot, such as your parents, who told you that that's just the way that it is, and you can't see what the real answer is for yourself, so you just take it. You think maybe your parents have a better vision.
Yeah,
of what
some people exploit that
you.
Trust.
Go ahead, Grim.
Well, there's a difference. Maybe you touched on this because I'm sorry I was in and out, but there's a difference between faith and confidence. Can you define what that is?
Right. Yeah. So Doolittle, these inferences we make to put confidence in others, I think that's a poor usage of faith, and because you're not. It's not like you don't have a reasonable justification to do that at times, or at least you believe you have that. So if you look to someone like your parent, you're not putting faith in your parent. You're simply following the rules most of the time when you're a kid. It's like the rule says of kiddom that, your parents are essentially the dictators. You have certain freedoms outside your parents, but not that many. So you kind of, when things are happening, like you say there's a fight breaking out in public and the kids are always looking for where their parent is. They have reasonable justification to be looking for them to look to what to do next. If it was, if it was a faith-based relationship, it would be something like, someone would say, how do you know that Richard Dawkins has the right answer? Because I have faith. And then you're like, well, no, tell me more. Like, how do you know? No, just because I have faith. Instead of saying, well, on this particular topic, Richard's an expert, and I did a quick check of the scientific consensus, and it lines up with the scientific consensus. So that's a lot different than, the way people use faith.
I don't know. I think most people don't understand how their own knowledge and belief structures were formed in their own minds.
Sure, I don't think anyone believes that they do know that.
So
that would be very hard to map.
the belief structures that we describe as faith are necessarily ones that we cannot come to that conclusion through rational thought.
Like what?
Any belief structure where you can't come to the conclusion that you believe.
Right. So as an example,
be true, just through rational thought and evidence. So, for example, if you believe in God, you have faith that God exists. How did you ever come to believe that God exists? Right. The real answer is that somebody told you that. People
might have some people, revelation that they attribute to that, and they might find the text on their own. But Doolittle, let's test this.
But then they're believing a book. They're not believing their own. And if someone comes to the belief in God through rationalization, then I think you would be hard pressed to find someone that says, well, then I just have faith in God.
Right. That's why I specified.
They'll explain their rationalization.
Yeah, that's why I specified.
So that's something that they came to. That's something that they came to through their own rational thought and their own vision and their own evidence that they gathered, and they understand how they built those belief systems. But the faith belief system is one that was built for you, and you don't remember how it was built.
Now, because they're bad people that do bad things with religion, and you can't just have faith in them.
Nivik, wait a sec. That didn't make any sense. Can you say that again?
That's just the way that I feel like faith happens in people. So
Doolittle, let's try to put this to the test. Your idea of faith.
Okay.
Where do you think the layman has faith in anything outside of God?
Ooh, I'm next. Can I be next?
Yeah.
Where do I think the layman has faith in anything outside of God? I think a lot of people have faith that myself, for example, I have faith that the United States Constitution creates a framework for a government that is very difficult to corrupt.
That's not faith, dude.
And
you have reasonable justification for that.
No matter what president gets, let me get to my faith. No matter what president gets elected, I think that I feel like I kind of feel what I would describe as faith that Joe Biden is not going to screw up our country, and I have faith that the system that's created is robust enough to withstand any of his anything that he might do, whether it's malicious or bumbling or caused by his puppet masters or whatever. I feel faith in our system.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe it hasn't been put to this kind of test before. So the fact that it hasn't,
but
you can go into that situation with faith.
You understand the checks and balances of your government. That's your reasonable justification. Nivik, please mute, man.
Okay. But I'm trying to describe the feeling that I have, because to me it's hard to say, okay, this guy that I really disagree with on almost everything got elected, our judiciary system seems to be neutered at best, and our legislature has been taken over by the other side too. I have faith that it's not going to go into a downward spiral. To me, it's more like a feeling.
Yeah. So people use
it's not
that.
informed by
Sorry.
actually. It's not informed by the system actually having been tested by such a thing in the past.
Right. So I would say you have a long list of reasonable justifications to believe that, Doolittle. So if someone tested your belief as to why you believe that about your government, you would be able to give a long list. If we're looking at the knowledge triangle in the justification section, you would be able to give a long ass list of all your justifications. You know, and
okay,
and also, you know.
So by my own definition, that's not faith, huh?
Well, I think. Well, no, I'm just arguing. I'm just arguing that you're using it incorrectly.
Okay.
You know,
what do you think is more correct?
I think people throw it around, throw this term around loosely, and perhaps what you're talking about is like maybe a common colloquial slang version of faith. But the problem is that faith is supposed to mean something different. Like, we wouldn't have the label if it meant the same as reasonable justification that could be applied to your belief structure. So we have to make sure that faith means something, not a synonym for hope. And then you have to look at the root of the term, and the usage of the term, and then we can debate that. Go ahead. Grim, you wanted to get in, man, and then we'll go check.
Oh yeah. So I use faith when I have everything against me and I need to have hope. I think hope is very synonymous with faith. So if I'm going to say that I have faith in something, it is merely hope at that point. There are definitely good reasons, sure, to have hope, but usually it's hope is used in a way where you literally have nothing else, right? So to me, that is faith, and that, I think, is the better term to be used, because everything else, and sometimes I'll have conversations with theists, and it's like, yeah, I guess I have faith, but it's not having anything. Do I have faith to sit in a chair and it not falling down? Yeah, but I also have confidence. So if I can replace it with confidence, then I don't need faith, right? So
so Grim, I think you're just using that wrong, man. Faith means something different than hope. There's a difference between the religious believer who says, I have faith that God does exist, as opposed to the one that says, I hope God exists. Those are different claims.
Okay, well, let me be clear too, because I also, maybe I didn't put a little asterisk there, because I use faith when it comes to hope. Then there's the religious faith, which I take Dillahunty's take on it, which is believing in something with no evidence whatsoever. I mean,
the excuse you give for believing something when you have no good reason to give is what
no good reason, right? Exactly. Yeah, and that to me is dogmatic religious faith. I use faith when it comes to, I have faith in this person. It's hope. It's me. I think that's when it's best used. Other than that, I don't see a need for it, right? Unless you're George Michael and you need to sing.
Yeah. So and one thing I would say before we go to check is faith is primarily in English used in the religious sense. Like if you look at how the conversations you have throughout your day to day and your life, you don't find people walking around saying, I have faith in my friendship. I have faith in, I have faith in the food that is feeding me, if it's not being used in a religious sense. So I'm challenging you guys on how you understand this to be used, or how you're using it. Go ahead, Chick.
So I think we're pretty much on the same page there. What I'm getting the sense is, on a more casual sense, is in the past, and I think I definitely do this, I use the term hope when it's something more passive. Like, over the last few years, I was having some troubles, and I know at times I would just say, oh, I hope it gets better. Like, there was just no direction behind it, just completely throwing myself to fate. And anytime I would use the term faith, though, there would be some intention behind it, some deliberate, I don't know, just sense behind it. And I think that's what Doolittle was getting at too, is his big thing was the Constitution, that everything that he's seeing, it's difficult for him to retain the idea that things will make it out of the other end of the next 4 years just fine. So he mentioned it's not easy to believe that that's going to be okay. So that, I think that was the magic word there, was that it's difficult to maintain faith. Is that what you were getting at, Doolittle?
Yeah, I think that actually is a good, probably a better
And
description of what I was trying to say than what I said.
Yeah, and my argument to Doolittle would be that you don't have to invoke faith there, brother. You can just say, I know the checks and balances we have in the country, and there's a very good chance that things are going to maintain within this democratic process, and things are not going to get thrown in the trash bin. What up, Metal?
Yeah, I don't know. All the evidence that I have says otherwise.
Such as,
it looks like there's going to be, what they call court packing, which is where the legislature writes a law that expands the number of members in the judiciary. So whatever the check and balances of the judiciary could, with the stroke of a pen, go away.
And why is that?
That could be a downward spiral.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, but people have come in and tried to change these systems in the past, right?
Yeah, but I mean, the government was more balanced in the past, right? I mean, right now you have one party controlling every branch of government.
Right, but it's not like they can just do whatever the fuck they want, though. There's
there's a filibuster in the Senate, right? And there's many ways that gets run around. And if they find a way to run around the filibuster to eliminate the filibuster, then there isn't any way for the 49% to stop the 51% at this point from doing whatever they want.
Yeah, so Doolittle, you have all the fucking justification in the world to support your belief about your and even if and it sounds like you actually believe that you're on a little bit of shaky ground as to whether the government is going to really be able to sustain this amount of one-sided pressure. But that's a very detailed based on how you understand the evidence of reality belief. So that
I don't know. I think faith has to be. You have to be on shaky ground before you can invoke faith.
Yeah, but my thing is like, it just, if words no longer like mean anything different, it's like, then if we're and this is why I like having conversations about these terms sometimes, because faith, I think if we look at how faith is used in society, and maybe you have a different view of this, but if we want to maintain that word means something, not like it means hope, because that doesn't work. Because if we go to look at the religious person who's claiming that they have faith that God does exist, and then you're to say, oh, so you hope that God exists? They're like, no, I know that God exists because I have faith. Yeah. Those are two completely different convictions, But I mean, it's I think it's the war of terms is something that is really hot right now. Like in the past 20 years in humanity, they've been warring over these labels. Everyone's just, language is being changed. What is a man? What is a woman? Things are adapting and changing. A lot of people don't even know what the fuck terms mean anymore. And I think part of it is that people kind of have this idea that words are starting, like words have usages. They don't have intrinsic meaning, so we can change them. But I'm saying that we ought to be precise with our language based on common usages of the terms. And if we find a word that the common usage is just so subjective, like love or God, then you find that those terms often become the center of debates, because people end up having to start the debate off with like, oh, what should or how should this term be used? Like atheism went through this.
I can kind of simplify the conversation a bit, because just went and look up the definition for faith.
I can hardly hear.
Yeah, let's hear it. He said he
sorry.
said he just looked up the definition for faith and he can simplify it. So I'd like to hear.
I think I can simplify. I think. So the first one. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear you now.
All right. The first one is complete trust or confidence of someone or something, and the example it uses: this restores one faith in politicians.
Mm-hmm.
That's an example.
That's a good example. Yeah.
That's a great example.
That destroys it.
So,
and then there's the second. There's the second definition: strong belief in God or in the doctrines of religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof.
Guys,
so I would just ask.
Also
so I would just ask
synonymous with trust.
I would just ask on the first version of the definition. I would just ask Doolittle, like, do you have faith in the Constitution? Just simply, flat out, do you have faith in the Constitution?
Yeah, and where it becomes contentious is where you start to doubt your faith, right? And so that's where the meaning of faith is probably the most important.
Then it
is
just
when a
turns
person
into
has doubt in their own faith.
Why do you have
all faith really is like all faith really is trust plus. It's like extra trust.
Trust plus,
so
extra trust,
trust
like
plus.
super trust.
Doolittle, why do you have faith in your Constitution? Why do you have complete trust and confidence in your Constitution? By the way, one thing, Metal, words have usages.
I know,
they don't have
change.
intrinsic meaning, right? So citing a dictionary definition it within the context of having a conversation of how this term ought to be used is kind of useless. But anyways,
I don't think it's completely useless. I just think it helps a bit.
Why do I have complete trust in our Constitution to maintain the system of government in a way that is, I don't know, that doesn't get corrupted over time. I think, I don't know, because I studied it a lot, and I've been, and I've continuously looked for why does this thing work, and studied the basis behind it, and looked at other systems and how they fail, and I can't come up with a better idea no matter how hard I look.
Mine's a little simple.
So why don't you just say this is I think the system we have is the best system I can find. Why would you say I have faith in the system?
Because I think the faith comes in because I'm having a hard time predicting the future, right?
But I like what you said earlier when you said you had trust in the system. You trust the system, right? I think that was the more powerful thing to say, is that you trust the system.
I trust the system, not necessarily the people in it. And the reason why I trust it is because of the foundations that that are built between my knowledge of it and looking at history and looking at how it was built and why it was built the way that it was. So I kind of feel like I have a knowledge of the inner workings of why the system seems to work.
Yeah.
And then when it's put to a challenge that I can't predict what the outcome is going to be, at that point I have to say when I make a prediction, when I make a model in my own mind of what the future is going to look like, without actually having the ability to feel like I'm confident in my prediction, I pick a side, and I say the reason I picked that side is because of faith.
No, dude. The reason why you picked that side is
That's
because
just-
it's been demonstrated to you to be, in your opinion, the best system going. That's your reasonable justification.
Yeah.
Like
That's a reasonable justification
like you're not
for picking that
bending
side.
you're not bending over and
For
saying
making
faith
a prediction
to
of for making a prediction of whether our government will still be here in a few years from now after we undergo, nationwide riots and things like that.
So
Mine's a little simple.
To me,
one
that's
last thing.
To me, that's a.
Yeah, and one last thing, Doolittle. I
It
would
could
just
easily
say that
go the other way.
whatever prediction you make, Doolittle, you have all the reasonable justification lined up already to make that to say, I think it's likely the case that X. There is no faith that need be invoked there. What were you saying there, Metal?
No, my view on this is pretty simple. It's just I don't have the knowledge Doolittle has. I know I have simple facts about the Constitution. I'm not as in depth as what he knows far more about the Constitution than I ever will, unless I go and take the time to look at it.
Maybe.
So my only reason is to have faith in this is just it works so far, so might as well keep going.
So Metal,
I got
so far. It works so far. That's your reasonable justification. You don't need to say faith.
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Nivik.
Faith is synonymous with hope in many ways. You fall back on hope when all else fails in reasoning. Faith, there's no compromise with religion when it comes to that.
Did you have
when all things
Catholic?
fail, let me just finish. When all things fail and come to failure in rationalizing, you rely on things beyond your understanding and power in hope. And a lot America's past, you have to understand, a lot of people, they were very religious minded, so they put those things in.
You're getting
in
off.
phrases.
You're getting off on a tangent here. Catholic, you were going to say something?
Yeah. I guess I slightly disagree. Definition of faith, it really depends, but I think faith is usually stronger than confidence because it's something faith has to do with something foundational usually. Now again, when we're using I have faith, you might just use that as a substitute for some kind of trust, but often faith is used as some kind of a foundational belief, and I think everybody requires some foundational belief. So yeah, I do think everyone has faith.
So foundational belief, would you include any presupposition? Because what I would say about my presuppositions that are applied to my moral foundation is, I like the idea that life is preferential to death and that health is preferential to sickness, but I'm not claiming that it is right or the best thing.
Okay.
So I would, my challenge would be, try to demonstrate to me where I use faith in my life.
Well, I think there's a bunch of places where you hold foundational beliefs. I would, for example, say you presuppose some kind of principle of charity when you're talking to people, right? So, for example, you presuppose that your interlocutor is being rational in their thought.
No.
You don't.
No.
So how do you know when I said you don't? I didn't mean go close your window.
Because we're using common language, and I'm evaluating your language as it comes.
But if I was irrational, I could mean close your window.
It doesn't matter what you could mean. It matters what you're actually saying in reality.
Wait, are you saying that?
Because in your head, Catholic, in your head, you might in fact be saying go close the window, but it came out as something rational and coherent to the conversation.
Exactly. So you don't actually understand what I was saying, right?
No, I do, because I am listening to what I'm perceiving.
If I was telling you to go close your window by using the sound, I don't, and you understood this as a negation, then you didn't correctly understand what I meant.
But we have a correct understanding of English and how and language and how it plays out.
But again, it's your fundamental assumption that I'm using that language in a rational manner.
No,
correct?
I don't have to make that assumption. I can just hear what you're saying and react to what you are saying.
Then you don't have a justification for what I mean.
No, no, I do have justification. My justification would be that you said these words together, and that's why I responded with X. But you might say something again and say
you wouldn't know what I meant.
No, that's fine. I'm not claiming to know what you meant.
But then why are you conversing with me if you're not interested in what I mean?
No. You just missed it again. I said I'm not claiming to know what you meant. I don't need to know, Canadian Catholic. I don't need to know what you mean if you're using language incorrectly. I can use your language as the justification.
Why would I be using language incorrectly? I could be following my own rules.
You might be, but this is when you're interlocuting with someone. If
then then you would be using the language you're using the way you're using. It would be inappropriate in my rule system. So how would you tell me that?
This is why we have colloquial usages of language.
But I could devise my own language, right?
You could, but you're going to find as a social species, and when you're trying to interact with other people with English, that you're often not going to be able to communicate in any way helpful.
Exactly, and to avoid that, we need foundational beliefs.
No, dude, you can't make that leap. What we need is a working language like we have.
Then you're stuck with skepticism.
What?
Then you're stuck with skepticism.
No, it's not stuck with skepticism. I'm not making any Canadian Catholic.
But you could never interpret what I meant.
So when your mic is off right now, I'm not assuming anything about what is going to come out of your mouth, including whether it will be logical, rational, or coherent to what you are trying to mean. I'm not making any assumptions.
Then you cannot know what I mean when I use words.
I know what you just meant by what you said. And when I say no, I mean to a 99.9%.
Hold on a second. You can know what somebody meant. You can know what somebody meant.
Of course you can.
Not unless you understood.
Because communication is a three-way road.
I get what Canadians.
Not unless you understood the rule they were following.
Yes, but the rule, Canadian Catholic, is what I was just saying, the colloquial usage of these words in this language.
What do you mean by colloquial? I could devise a language that has its own rules.
You can write your own language right now and try to communicate.
How do you know that I'm not already doing it when you're talking to me?
How do I know you're not already doing it? Because my sense-making apparatus is telling me and creating this this cinema of just wait. It's creating this cinema that includes audio, and I'm looking at your thing blinking, and I know you're talking.
What I'm asking you is, when I use words, how do you know what I mean without some kind of a foundational belief?
The language
Canadian, I know what you're
in
talking about,
my
Canadian.
Brain, Catholic, are
Canadian, you're not understanding. Words are things that we've devised that involve rules.
That's fine.
Following.
Excuse me, Canadian. Can I ask you something? Yeah. You're saying because I know when people say faith in the Constitution, Trav is saying, well, you have reasonable rationalization, but some people, they'll interpret it differently in it being a religious point of view and not in a democratic check and balance point of view in the system.
And when you use faith in that,
so they're interpreting. So people are miscommunicating. I'm seeing where you're coming from.
Okay. So when you use the word faith in in that instant, so you have to be quiet so I can start talking. So when you use the word faith in that instance, what you mean is trust. You have trust in the Constitution. Okay, so you have some kind of level of you assign some level of authority.
Yes, I agree with you on that, Canadian Catholic.
Yeah. Not everybody means that.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. What I'm saying is, often when we're using faith in a religious sense or in the sense that I was just trying. What we mean is beliefs that are much more foundational than simply "I trust this will work," right? Because I trust that my pencil will write, but that's not what I mean when I say I have faith in God, right? I mean some kind of something different.
Right.
Not everybody believes that it's trust.
The two terms.
They don't believe that it's trust. They
But
believe
I
it's
think
faith
what
in
happened-
God.
there's a reason why the two words exist. Go ahead, Metal.
I think what happened is the word might have deteriorated because some people have probably sometimes will use faith as instead of trust, as a sort of emphasize something. Like I don't want to just say trust. I want to mean trust to the farther extent. So I guess I'll just use faith.
Yeah, but Metal.
It could be just a devolvement of the word.
Yeah, but you guys, you have to understand.
And I mean,
faith,
I don't have a problem trying to correct that.
Faith is not faith.
It's just gonna be hard to do.
Faith is an absolute adherence. Canadian Catholic, you have absolute faith that a God exists, right?
Well, I don't know what it means to have absolute faith.
Okay, do you have faith that God exists?
Yeah, I'm a Catholic.
Okay, do you have faith that the next chocolate bar you eat is not going to taste like dog shit?
Yeah, I also have faith in that. Yeah.
You have faith in that? That's how you use faith?
Well, in different sense, not the same sense, right? Again, I wouldn't say that I have the same kind of faith. In one case, I have faith that God exists. In another case, I have trust. And sometimes we use the word faith interchangeable with just any trust.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier.
I know some people do that. I know some people do that, but my fundamental argument here is people ought not do
We're not
that.
talking about those people.
Yeah, I think faith is more like is not okay. I believe Jesus exists very strongly. Faith is like Jesus.
I know Jesus exists. That's faith.
Faith is Jesus take the wheel, as in I no longer trust myself to make the right decisions. I'm gonna do what Jesus says.
Not all people use it.
That's faith. And
or
faith
karma.
in the Constitution is I no longer trust my own senses to tell me what's going to happen in the future. I have faith in a system that it's going to work out all right for me if I just follow this system.
Or I have faith the universe will correct things.
2 seconds, so guys. We're gonna switch over to the.
Not all. It's not all interchangeable with trust. Some of them is from a religious reference.
2 seconds, Nivik. We're just going to switch over to the after show, head down to Trav's Tavern. We'll just hang out. We can keep this conversation rolling because it's interesting. Right. But those of you on YouTube, please join us down in Trav's Tavern. We turn our cams on. We get to know each other a little bit better. It's a social place to hang out. So I hope you come on and join us. You'll find the Discord link in the description of this video. Thank you guys for joining us for another Pangburn Hangout. And as always, let art and science inspire.